be something like this. Dr. Merkel will speak for an hour and a half, depending on what kind of response he gets from the audience. Are we going to reserve a question period?
Yes.
Okay. Hold your questions. There will be a question and answer period throughout the session, probably several of them. There'll be a break sometime between 11 and 11:30 for about 20 minutes. Then we'll gather back and we'll go until 1 o'clock. We'll take an hour and a half lunch break from 1 till 2:30, and then we'll reconvene. And I think from 2:30 until approximately 4 or 5 o'clock, we're going to try to deal with unanswered questions and maybe some new ideas that have come up. There are some things that will perhaps cause us to change the course of the agenda, but nothing dramatic. Dr. Merkel is going to be in full control up here, and he's done these things many times, so we're going to leave it in his very capable hands.
Is it possible to turn those lights up behind the podium, please? They interfere with can't see you speak.
We'll try and get them turned off for you. Mary? The lights behind the podium. Thanks. Okay, I have one other thing that I want to discuss. It comes up many times. There has been some controversy. Dr. Merkel is not associated with a product called Nutriana, nor is he associated with a product called Guyandriana. The name Chondriana, that is his discovery, that is his trademark. The products that are known as Nutriana and as Guyandriana do not contain his Chondriana. And in our meetings, High Life Formulas, we've made that very clear. In the beginning, there was some confusion, but over the last several months, we say that time and time again, that the product that we have been marketing as Nutriana is not Dr. Merkel's, and it does not contain his Chondriana. There may be some questions regarding that. Dr. Merkel is here to talk about his discovery of life crystals and Chondriana, and that's what he wants to discuss with us this morning. That is the basis for his lecture. Now, I've been following Dr. Merkel's work for about 8 or 9 months now, when I first became aware of it, and I got to try his life crystal, I think it was towards the end of February of this year, and about the same time I saw the video. I was one of the skeptics. I said, this is too good to be true. But I was privileged in July to be able to go down to meet him, and I was able to spend 6 hours with him in his home and in his new manufacturing facility. And I know Dr. Merkel now as not only a brilliant researcher, but a very caring, warm, open individual. And that's the thing that came across most to me. He cares about us. He cares about this planet. He has a lot to offer. We want to support him in whatever manner we can. I'm not going to say much more about him because he can tell you all about himself much better than I can. I just want you to help me in welcoming him to Vancouver this sunny Saturday afternoon. Dr. Merkel?
Before I begin, I'd like to announce the release of 2 new books. 500-page picture documentary is going to be released in this month. Takes you far beyond the Chondriana. I would like to read to you the dedication of this book. I freed my mind from captivity as I believe in the freedom of thought. I have no desire for recognition because I have no ego. On the plane I live, there is peace and comfort. My work is for the children yet to be born. In a healthy, free society, the mental and physical freedom is a prerequisite for progress. In a decadent and oppressive societies, when the mental freedom is curtailed, the physical will explode. While when the physical freedom is curtailed, the mental will take off. I came to the United States 1957 from the East. I spent 6.5 years in concentration camp with some of the top scientists of the world to build the East. I worked for major corporations as an electrical engineer or electronic engineer in the United States. And my last job was with Boston Jordan and Anaconda as a project coordinator on the Texas Gulf Sulfur Copper Refinery in Timmins, Ontario. When I finished that project, I started my own company back in 1965, and by 1968, I had the first practical cold fusion going, producing half isotopes. I built accelerators for a few $100s. What our government spends billions to build. I used high-purity metal crystals to rearrange the grains into simple geometrical form, opening up the domain, creating macrocapillaries with superconductive properties. That's what led me into the first cold fusion, and it's a byproduct came out of that called the pentoxyhydrate, which was classified in 1974 for some time. In 1977, I announced to the world that the energy crisis is over, and I went on national television in the United States, and I demonstrated to the Department of Energy of practical cold fusion and miniature suns, miniature hydrogen bombs, produced on a hot plate. I produced so much free energy from 300 Fahrenheit, increasing it to hundreds of millions of degrees centigrade temperature, to creating the miniature hydrogen bomb from free energy. The free energy was derived from the atmosphere, the static field. The reason I'm telling you this because it's all interrelating to my work. I left the country in 1982 and went to Antwerp where I was doing research on producing synthetic diamonds. And during this course of work, in conjunction with Rice University, I discovered when I replaced carbon with nitrogen in the diamond lattice isomorphously, I created the energy transducer. An energy transducer with the light carbon oscillating around the heavier nitrogen was capable of transducing enough energy that I was able to reverse the spin of the proton. Now, later when I came back to the United States and I retired in 1985, in my retirement, I pursued the search of connection between free energy and life. I was in and out of researching plants, plant lives, and I was fascinated by the delivery system within the capillaries of the plant, how the root system of the plant draw on free energy from the atmosphere, from static field, which act as a pump to pump the fluid up in the capillaries. During this course of work, I also found that the cross-section of the capillaries and the number of capillaries in the root system is directly proportional to the atmospheric pressure, to the static charge of the air, and the conductivity of the air, which of course is moist, the water content. This also explains why trees doesn't grow on high elevation. We have plenty of energy, but we have no conductivity. And why the trees are tall at sea level, and why the plants are much healthier at sea level. Now, I'd like to stop here for a moment and take you back in time when the universe was born from the Big Bang, the big burst of energy. From that free energy which moving through time and space, filling a giant bubble with free energy. I call it the energy of creation, and there is nothing wrong with it to call it the breath of God. 918 pairs of scrolls of this free energy is braided into a static field which we call photons. That's the way light was born. 918 pairs of these photons braided into one electrons, and 918 pairs of electrons braided into one neutrons. And that's the way light was molded into matter. By losing one electron, we gained a proton, and that one electron is orbiting around the positive hydrogen to make the atom of hydrogen. This hydrogen, at enormous pressure, form metallic hydrogen, and this metallic hydrogen is filling the cores of suns and stars. And during the lifetime of the sun, this metallic hydrogen is the fuel which is burning, fusing together to forming heavier elements, and made way the creation of planets which are broke out of the sun. All planets have been broken out from suns and stars. When our planet broke out from the sun, the reason we have to see, because we broke out at a time when the fusion was at a point we produced, or the sun was producing fusing a lot of silicon and a lot of aluminum, and those formed stable hydrides, bringing home the sea. And that's how our planet brought the water out of the sun. Now, when the sun burns out, it turns into a red star. As it cools down, it will explode. It will shed its electrons and give birth to a neutron star, and that neutron star will go down a black hole, breaking down to free energy, to filling the great balloon. Recycling, like everything else throughout the whole universe, is constantly recycling. At the early time when our planet was born, we had an atmosphere of moist water, methane, ammonia, the primordial atmosphere. And this primordial atmosphere, from the breath of creation, from the energy which came from the sun, a process began to produce and synthesize the adenine and guanine from the ammonia and the methane gas. By the way, in my diamond process, I use primordial gas to produce the diamond from gas phase. Methane gas and ammonia gas. The reason I used ammonia gas because I needed the nitrogen to put into the diamond lattice to give luster to the diamond. It's ironic that the same process has been taken care in our atmosphere as the manna was falling from the skies and filling the primordial seas as the rains washed down the nutrients which was prerequisite for life formation. Of course, in the early evolution, spontaneous DNA did not evolve in the primordial seas by rather short-chain DNAs, in other words, viruses. The primordial seas were loaded with viruses and bacteria. And in order for a higher order of life to evolve, a form of life had to evolve to clean up the primordial seas. But even before that, a process had to evolve to produce adenosine and guanosine phosphate to build DNAs, because without that, life cannot evolve. Even viruses have the adenosine and guanosine phosphate in their DNAs. The source of ATP was crucial. So there must have been some organelles manufacturing ATP, adenosine triphosphates. And this organelle is known as mitochondria. The mitochondria was the first organ in the primordial sea that it's evolved. And this mitochondria then later on provided the fuel tank for the chloroplast and the cyanobacteria. Now, the reason I go in this detail so that you will understand later on what life crystal is and how life crystal functions. But let's back up a little bit now, and we return back to the primordial soup later and take a look at life crystal. Now, in our cell today, every cell in our body, we have numerous mitochondria producing ATP. ATP is the primary fuel of your cell, providing 95% of your energy. The adenosine and guanosine is sequenced laterally in your DNA. We are made of it. All our enzymes are made of it. The mono, di, and triphosphates of adenosine and the guanosine are the basic building blocks of all our factories and proteins inside our cells. These components are controlling the respiration of our cell membrane, the nutrient flow of our cell membrane. And even the ATP aminase, our immune system is dependent on them. Now, I set out to replicate nature's process and repeat the Krebs cycle, which takes place within our cell to produce ATP in order to be able to make the life crystal. It was a long road. Took me about 5 years. And finally, I got the life crystal, which contains ATP, GTP, and pentacarbon sugars in the unpurified form. And that is the life crystal nutritional or dietary supplement. Its purpose to provide energy and to provide the ATP and GTP for restoration, to restore the functional cell membranes, the enzymes, and of course there are other very important characteristics of the life crystal. Now, I do not want to put claim on the life crystal nutrition supplement, but I tell you, go to the library and pick up any biochemical book and read upon or read up of what adenosine and guanosine phosphate can do for you. And also the function of the glucose and fructose phosphate, which is participating in the Krebs cycle to converting into ATP and energy supply for your cells. But it's very interesting that purified life crystal, when I isolate the ATP and GTP from the life crystal crude, the nutritional supplement, purifying through an 8-step purification process, and redissolve it in distilled water, it will depolarize the water, changing the bonding energies of the water and the dipole moment Again, you can read it in any standard biochemical book. If you depolarize the water, its boiling point will rise and its freezing points will go down. But more than that, depolarized water will losing affinity to hydrophilic molecules. What this means, that the sodium and potassium ion in your system will have a smaller water jacket around it. And as a result, more of them will pass through the septums and the microtubules in your cell, delivering more energy. And once you supply more energy to your cell, the cell will rejuvenate, rebuild, become strong. Because we are going through a devolutionary process because our sun is cooling and we're losing energy and our cells becoming punier and punier, and eventually life will be extinct. But for now, we can reverse the trend. We can resupply our cells with energy, and the rejuvenation and restoration will follow. A very simple example, giving live crystal intravenously in countries and in clinics where we're doing clinical work. It's changing the size of lymphocyte to 20 to 30 microns. And all the organ cells become bigger and stronger because you're providing more energy. But what other thing biochemical books tell you will happen when you depolarize the water? This depolarized water, because the smaller diameter now, with a smaller water jacket around it, are able to pass through blocked passages, narrowed down passages. Like what you usually find people with epilepsy, seizures, strokes. So once you can penetrate these small passages and reestablishing conductivity for the nerve impulses, a recovery will follow. And the seizures of those children and people with epilepsy will recover, and stroke victims will recover as a result. And I'm not saying that. The biochemical books you can pick up in the library, and they will tell you that. Now we are running a lot of clinical studies in several countries. And we find, for example, that the Mayan girls whose mother was exposed to pesticides, parakeets, and DDT, they were born with birth defects. And just by drinking live crystal, they recover. Like little O'Malley, I have the reports here with me, 8 years old. And she had 200 to 400 seizures per month. And she's living a normal life today. Now we have many little kids like that, children like that, had the same problem. And their conditions has been restored as well. But these are just examples, what I'm telling you, what happens if you can reestablish conductivity so that the nerve impulses can pass. At the same time, when depolarized water losing affinity to hydrophilic molecules, it's going to build up affinity to hydrophobic molecules. Again, what that means in the layman's language. It will break carbon double bond. It will dissolve fats and oils, plaques and cholesterols. As a result, it will chelate your blood vessels. And any biochemical book will tell you that depolarized water have that capability. Now, live crystal depolarizes the water because it's adenosine phosphates in there. And I'm an example myself. It's very well known and very well documented that I had four heart attacks. And my wife sitting there, she knows that they wanted to give me 4 bypass. And I fired my doctor, Dr. PC in El Paso. And they told me I never make it home, I will die on the way. And here I am today with clean arteries, thanks to adenosine and guanosine phosphate. But if you go back and look at the FDA file, when they approved the adenosine, and they did the search way back in 1929, they already knew what adenosine and guanosine phosphates will do. And I wonder why some effort hasn't been spent to come up with a process to produce this compound at an affordable price, to make it available to the world who needs it. Now, we have two types of live crystal: the crude, which we call the nutritional supplement or dietary supplement, which we're manufacturing under the control of the FDA and the Health Department in the United States, and we're distributing it worldwide, provided we don't put medical claim on it, but we don't have to, because the people will find out what the product will do for them, and they can put the claim on it. We do not have any advertisement, and we do not promote the product out of the US. We're shipping it to people who want to buy it and resell it, and it's available to the world. We have to be very careful that we do everything right so that this product will be available for the people in time to come. But we also have the high purity live crystal, which we cannot manufacture or distribute in the United States. But there are other countries that we are allowed to do that. And we are in many countries conducting clinical data scientifically with some major hospitals, with some clinics, and some major figures behind it. We also register the product in a few countries. We also register in the process of registering in several other countries. We're also trying to work and register it in the United States. We have some encouragement from some country that the first approval of both live crystal Chondriana will be here by this coming spring. There is one country where we have 10 hospitals interconnected with computers, and with the cooperation of the local health departments, clinical studies are about to begin within the next 10 days to legalize the product and prove the product efficacy. Now, we're already working in 40 countries, and we already have hundreds of clinics and hospitals who are doing clinical studies and working with the product. We compiled a lot of data to prove what the product does, and the data is more than encouraging. At this point, I'd like to change the topics to the Chondriana, going back again to the primordial soup. The Chondrianas were known those days as cyanobacteria. I was able to synthesize these early life forms from my own DNA. In a matter of fact, I'm producing Chondriana 6 different ways. It can be produced from the DNA directly. I domesticated all our organelles inside our cells so I can mass produce all the components, all the proteins, and all the genetic materials, what's inside our cell in vitro. The so-produced, from the so-produced proteins with 2 turns of DNA around it, in a dispersed, unpolymerized genetic material, I can call back the Chondriana to life. So that's another way to make the Chondriana. It's made from human genetic material. Whether it's taken from a human or whether it's synthetically made, it's still human genetic material. I also produce Chondriana from primordial cells, from germ cell centers, which is located in several parts of our body. And here I will elaborate a little bit more. I just like to say you this much, that I also synthesized the animal chondrianas. And the horse chondriana is 5 times the size of a human chondriana. Instead of 100 micron, it's 500 micron. And in 3.5 billion years ago, the cyanobacteria of a horse was meant to be a horse. And the cyanobacteria of a human was meant to be a human. There is no Darwin evolution. Thank you. Every living organism had its own cyanobacteria already back then. It's not only that, but there have been many types of chondriana, many types of human chondrianas, because all the organelles, all the hardwares has been produced by the primordial sea before the higher order of life came about. There have been cyanobacteria that were producing organelles of different kinds. And then finally the great plan came, whoever is behind it and whoever decided that there should be different life forms brought upon this planet, decided what we are going to be at that time. And when all these organelles came together according to the master plan to create a higher order of life, one of the organelles which was needed was the fuel tank, the mitochondria. This is why I used to call the chondriana, from mitochondria, I coined the word chondriana. The reason for it, because the very first primitive life forms, the chondrianas, they only contain 2 organelles. In comparing to the rest of in comparing to the modern cells, which have many organelles in there. And these 2 organelles were the mitochondria, very high density mitochondria, and the primitive mitochondria, not as well developed as ours, and giant vacuoles. And these giant vacuoles were digesting the viruses and recycling it as the chondrianas were vacuuming it up. The chondrianas like little vacuum cleaners. They have a mouth like a sack. They can open it like the shutter of a camera. And they go and they can map up all the viruses and all the bacteria. And matter of fact, they can also attack, actually swallow whole cells and attack tissues and recycle it. But inside of them, they have these little factories, these little vacuoles, which is digesting everything and recycle it back to normal. They also lay some spores, from which spores then the killer cells evolve. So what they do, they go into, let's say for a cancerous tumor, and they lay there, and these evolving killer cells then consume the cancerous tissues, and they recycle it. But they're very super intelligent. They're very intelligent. They go and attack the root system, the feed system of the cancer first. So then the cancer eventually dies. The tumor eventually dies as they cut off the supply from them. But let's go back to the chondriana, because I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on the immune system. Why we had so many chondrianas? Because one way I also made the chondriana from the primordial cells. Primordial cells can be found in many places in our body, germ cells. So you know we have a very complex immune system. We go to the bone marrow where the B lymphocytes are being produced, B cells. These are really the patrol our body, who is producing the antibodies activation by the T cells. The stem cells from the bone marrow goes to the thymus, where they get activated and maturing into B cells that produce antibodies, of course T cells. There's a number of different types of T cells too. But in the bone marrow, we have fetal tissue, just like in the thymus, and just like in our sex organs. Now, when a female conceives, the first thing will evolve is fetal tissue. The 3 layers of the skin, the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the exoderm. And from the first you evolve the skin, and the second you evolve the bones, and the third one the internal organs. And this plays a very important part also on what type of stem cells you're going to develop in your bone marrow. And I don't think that in scientific circle they're clear about this. This is why we have so many different types of immune cell. Depending on which layer of this fetus tissue those immune cells evolved. Now, I'm going to get to a point to prove it to you that we had a primary immune system which we lost. Once they, from the thymus, then they go into the lymph channel and the lymph nodes and the spleen. These are the lymphatic organs, and these cells will circulate in your lymph system to patrolling your body to get ready if you need to be defended. But I came to the conclusion when I was searching for our origin. I was searching for the primordial cytoplasm to find out where we came from. And I wound up studying the germicidal centers, which is not only present in the lymphatic system, but also in our sex organs, both male and female. And I was able to synthetically, in vitro, from human genetic material, reproduce these germ centers. And to my surprise, I found that from a female germ center, I could produce either an ovum or a spermatozoa. Then I took a male germinal center, and from the male germinal center, again, I could produce either spermatozoa or a female ovum, depending on the balance of the hormones, female and male hormones. So I had sort of control on it. Now I went studying further the function of these primordial cells and what is the relationship between the sex cells and the primordial cells. Primordial cells can differentiate into any type of cells. I can take a primordial cell from a sex cells, and the same primordial cell can be differentiated into any organ cells, because they too, it's like fetal tissue. These are the origin, the undifferentiated cells. So you can go many different directions depending on how you control it and how you're handling the energy level. During my studies, I also found out that taking antibiotics will suppress not only the immune system, but also all the germ cell production, from the bone marrow to the thymus to the sex cells. And the sperm count will nosedive after taking antibiotics. There's a lot of other factors which can also affect the degeneration or the destruction of the stem cell production through certain type of chemicals, radiation. I'll give you an example, for example. When they dropped the bomb in Hiroshima, 15 days later, people were bleeding to death from internal bleeding because the platelet production was destroyed by radiation. And the rest of them died from infections because the whole immune system and the whole primordial cell production was destroyed by radiation. A lot of chemical does the same thing. When I was giving live crystal intravenously, not me personally, but doctors in the clinic, then the sperm count, male sperm count, increased 300 to 400% due to the increase of primordial cell production. Increasing the energy level of the primordial cell production, primordial cells, instead of evolving into spermatozoa or ovum, they develop and differentiate into giant lymphocytes and T cells to protect you. Now, going a step further, I also found out a little bit more depth that primordial cells themselves can defend you. And the fetus in the woman is defended by primordial cell. That's the only place they are present. But now if you increase the energy level on these germinal centers, then you can increase the production of your primordial cells, which in turn will help to rejuvenate all your organs because you're producing more cells, but also lifting your immune system. And you can bring back your immune system to the point that it will defend you against diseases, mostly for prevention. It was very interesting to note during the research that I also was looking at immune cells with antibodies. These antibodies are produced inside the cell. So inside the cell, you can defend yourself too. The enzymes inside your cell attacking into the virus. I have videotaped documentary on it, how an enzyme removes the coding of a virus so the Candriana can move in and destroy it, or inside the cell, they recycle the intruder by undressing it and make it vulnerable and being recycled. So it goes far beyond just from the external defense. We can have defense inside our cells if our enzymes in a good condition. And this is where adenosine and guanosine phosphate goes a long way. And again, I don't have to put claim on the live crystal drink because it's well known what adenosine and guanosine does, and it's in there. That's the major components. Going a step further, I wanted to know how the whole system is working, or the evolution of the sex cells as I was studying the function of the germ cells. In vitro, placing a human or an animal spermatozoa. Most of my work I was doing with horse spermatozoa because they're larger and it's easier to document it, videotape it. Placing them into live crystal. Live crystal has the life-giving ATP. Now, I must mention also that live crystal, when depolarizing the water, it's not only depolarizing the water, but giving the water a tetrahedral crystal structure, which is responsible for picking up free energy. And without free energy, life cannot exist. So it becomes a live water. But live crystal itself is tetrahedral. And if you look at a section of the pyramid, tetrahedral pyramid of each grain of live crystal, there is a vortex going through the center. And when a proton gradient pumping electrons through that microtubules, it will generate a toroidal field. Because the base of the pyramid and the tip of the pyramid, the field is weaker but larger in the bottom and stronger and smaller in the top. So it creates a vortex field. And the crystals around the pyramid of live crystals will deposit in a vortex pattern. So live crystal really has a vortex structures, as I have it on the cover of this book. That is the reason live crystal can tap into the energy of creation and pass it on to the water, to energize the water. But going either further, a step further, live crystal itself, not only depolarizing, but actually breaking down light. Breaking down light to the to the breath of creation, changing the wavelength of the photon. This is why I'm able to make the photograph. This is why I have done microscopic work nobody else ever been able to do. Because I'm showing all the factories and all the assembly lines inside of our cells. And that is the reason for it. Now, light will not come through. Now, the only time light comes through on live crystal if you wet it. Because the water will absorb the energy and let the light through. Now, going back to the spermatozoa in the live crystal solution, the head will separate from the tail and become two independent life, because the head no longer dependent on the spiral mitochondria providing the ATP, because there is more ATP in live crystal and much higher energy level. Immediately they begin to glow. Any genetic material in the pure live crystal solution, it will glow because there's so much energy there and it's beefing up the genetic process. The head of the spermatozoa starts swimming and even attacking any bacteria which gets into the culture. They're even attacking mildew if it gets into the culture and destroying it. Especially the horse primordial cell, which is also produced by the way, the head of the spermatozoa. Now, the head of the spermatozoa in live crystal, because the energy level available, begins to proliferate by itself. An entirely new way to proliferate and reproduce itself. But then goes far beyond than that, because these heads, individual life forms, they sporulate each other. And one becomes pregnant and opens up like a walnut to two halves and giving birth to a primordial cell. Taking this primordial cell now, I place it into a new culture, and the new germicidal center will evolve to produce germ cells or produce the 3 layers of the skin, the endotherm, the mesoderm, and exotherm. Now, depending whether your process going forward or reverse, depending on the energy level, what you are providing, which directly related to the concentration of the live crystal and the ATP, GTP gradients. They are intelligent and they are communicating with each other. I took the head apart and lifted out the nucleus, which I believe originates from the Sertoli cells, because also have 2 satellite nucleus, and with the cytoplasm and the centriole. And I domesticated them into a factory, producing histones and DNAs, individual histones and individual 2-strand DNA wrapped around the histone, dispersed genetic material, which then, of course, become part of the erector set to reproduce genetic materials of various forms. I want to insert here at this point that I was doing a lot of work with genetic material, crystallizing them, because the genetic materials contains the information. And I was able to make chromosomes, which is also shown in this book, chromosomes that are identical to the human chromosomes. But they're crystal. They're not alive, because the breath of creation, the breath of God is missing. So every time when you want to recreate life, you're really not creating, you're replicating. But if you want to create, you can't, because it will be lifeless. So the breath of life always has to be there. And going back to the primordial soup, which has been produced by live crystal, let's see what the tail is doing. The tail is an independent life as well, with the spiral mitochondria at one end. And right below the spiral mitochondria, there are granules. of the leftover degenerated ancient cytoplasm which has been contributed by the Sertoli cells. In biochemical books, every institution will teach you that when from the spermatogonia, a primary and secondary spermatocytes evolve or differentiate. Actually, they're splitting, and they evolve into the spermatid. The spermatid gets into the folds of the cytoplasm of the Sertoli cell, because the Sertoli cell is a nursing cell. It's not true. They're mating. The Sertoli cell is delivering genetic material to the spermatid and contributing the tail. Because when I raise them without the Sertoli cell, no tail will evolve, only the head. And the head will proliferate. Now, when we look at the tail, the ancient cytoplasm, I believe, came from the primitive Sertoli cells, was contributed by them. But it's only the remnants is there. And since they are in the live crystal, they're alive. And of course, the ATP and GTP in the solution will provide the energy for rejuvenation, and the ancient cytoplasm comes back to life. Fully evolving, restoring all the basal bodies, the centrioles, the cytoplasm, the protein production. And I domesticated the tail to produce histones. And I'm mass producing histones by the carloads. But further, if I break the bridge between the central tubule and the outer tubule in the tail of the spermatozoa and maintain it broken by ATP, they begin to bend. And they bend into circles. And from these circles, because the presence of the ancient cytoplasm, and that's where our immune cells originated from, that's where from the chondriana is originated from the ancient cytoplasm, where you only have vacuoles and mitochondria and the ancient cytoplasm, I too can develop not only the chondriana, but giant lymphocytes. So every tail of the spermatozoa can reproduce your lymphocytes. Now, because the whole history is located in the tail, depending on which section the tail is going to loop, of what type of life form you evolve, and how far back you go in time. And this is the information which basically described in the new book, which called The Might of the Live Crystal. It really shows you how far a live crystal can go and will go. Of course, a lot more work is ahead of us, because I only formed the beachhead, but I haven't explored the land yet. There's a lot more to do. There's a long way to go. I hope I was able to convey to you that our immune system, together with our life, came from way back 3.5 billion years ago, the age of cyanobacteria, or the chondriana. And the chondriana was trained on the battlefield. That's where they learned how to fight against viruses. But someone made sure that they were preserved, because one day we will need them again. Our whole immune system is evolved from the degenerated chondrianas. And the different type of immune system, same as the different type of chondrianas, because we can reproduce all the different type of chondrianas like the different type of immune cell. I have chondrianas which is equivalent to the macrophage. or macrophage, but much bigger than our present one. The killer cells, giant, much bigger than our present ones. The dendritic cell, which is also plays a major function of activating our T cells. Also from the chondriana. Chondrianas can lay down vacuoles, which grow into giant macrophages. They reproduce all our ancient immune system, what we had. And yet they can reproduce all our current one and make them strong. The chondriana can reproduce any protein to dissolve the coating of staphylococcus, for example, or attack and destroy viruses and bacteria. So it does a lot more than just directly attacking, because it's part of us. And it's natural. It's the same thing like if I give blood to somebody, because my blood contains my immune cells. And my immune cells are really chondrianas, providing you increase the energy level on them. Now, I have no evidence that just drinking the drink will evolve the chondriana. But drinking the drink, you will have big defense cells. And it will defend you against even common cold. And if you get a common cold, you will go over it much faster because your immune system is stronger. But basically, the chondrianas and our immune cells are tied together, because this is another way I can make chondriana. I can take a lymphocyte, put them into live crystal and increase the energy level. They turn into a chondriana. I decrease the energy level by diluting it with distilled water. They go back, become lymphocytes. So there's the absolute proof that they are part of us. And as part of our system, we used to have a much stronger defense system or immune system, but because the energy dropped, our cells becoming purer and purer. Now, I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on basically what's happening in our body and what's the function of the ATP and GTP, adenosine, guanosine phosphates. As time goes on, we are living in a polluted world. We're drinking poison water, poison air, and poison food. And that actually brings on aging too, but now we're hastening everything. So all our delicate factories are plugged up. We're receiving less and less energy. All the fine septums are halfway plugged. As we're receiving less and less energy, our cells become purer and purer. Our defense cells become purer, so we cannot defend ourselves. So we are living at a time that we are the filter in our environment, because everything we're taking in, we're filtering out. And therefore, in this kind of age, it's very important that everyone backwash his system, just like backwashing a swimming pool filter, to take all the garbage out and clean out your system and return the energy to our cell, what we are needing. And you certainly will not get that from a hot dog or a hamburger. Now, by restoring our system, I'm cleaning out and backwashing our system, chelating, cleaning out our blood vessels, not only from cholesterol deposits, but also sugar deposits. We have clinical data with people with diabetes mellitus, diabetes mellitus, which is the adult onset of diabetes. They still have some beta cells. And these clinics are doing terrific work, most of them located in Mexico, some of them in Europe. And by just giving live crystal injection alone, if somebody is scheduled for a leg amputation, they don't have to go through with it. The sugar can be removed, sugar deposit can be removed, circulation restored, the claudication goes away, and everything becomes normal after about 10 injections. Now we have a number of cases, well-documented clinical data to prove it. Of course, that we have ongoing clinical data and studies going on in this respect. We have patients who scheduled for kidney transplant. They didn't have to go through with it because the kidney become normal after removing the sugar deposits. Now these are kidney failure because of the sugar deposits, and you cut off circulation, respiration, nutrient flow. As a result, everything degenerates. And most of the time, 80% of the diseases today is directly related to the failure of circulatory problem. Because once you cut off respiration and the nutrient flow, the cell will degenerate and die, or become weak and puny, and the disease come in and attack. Okay? Like the wolf attacks the weak. And this can be all reversed just by cleaning out, restoring the circulatory system. And I can say this because a lot of clinics have done work and proved it black and white that adenosine and guanosine, which are basic component of live crystal, will clean out the blood vessels, even in the case somebody's 96 or 98% blood. If they stay on rigorously, and as the clinical data shows, they go in and initiate it with intravenous injection to speed it up a little bit, and then they just fall back on the drink for maintenance, and it's an ongoing, steady cleanup job. Not only that, but if anyone, speaking from my experience, for example, taking in a lot of fat, because now I can eat pizza. And the next day, urinating it out. It dissolves it, and you pass it out. Sometimes if you take in too much cholesterol, too much fat, you're coughing it up the next day. And, but basically, the most important for live crystal to restore the circulatory problem. You can take the elder people, and I have some clinical study done on 40 patients, elderly patients. We can take the elderly people and take them off from Medicare and put them back on the street. Clinics and doctors are saying that we can cut the medical cost into half, just with live crystal alone, by cleaning up the circulatory problem of the world, which is a very big problem. The Kandrianas, it's a different story. Now, it's blessing from God that it's here today, because we can go and help people who desperately need it. Now, we have a lot of obstacles to overcome. Number one is to clear the product and legalize it in every country. We have to go through the standard procedures of regulatory problems we're facing in each individual country. Some countries are easy, some countries is more difficult. Of course, ours is the worst in the US. And we're trying to get it on the market, and we keep it off the market. We don't want the product on the market on the ground. We want to have the product above the ground. We do not want anyone handling Kandriana other than clinics or doctors, because even if you inject distilled water intravenously, it's dangerous. The Kandriana only can be administered intravenously. They are 100 microns to 500 microns in size, and you certainly cannot take and absorb an elephant sublingually. So it has to be administered, not even intramuscular, intravenously has to be administered. They immediately go to the spot. I took a lot of treatment myself, and they find this trouble spot. There's a very strong immune reaction proceeding if the person is very sick or has a lot of toxin in the body. Some people don't have any reaction because vegetarians, especially when they are in good health and there is nothing to fight. But generally, when people take the Kandriana, they're getting very strong reaction, and the reaction is commensurate with the amount of disease and also the dosage rate. And the doctors and the clinics have to determine the dosage rate based on the condition of the patient and based on the past history of the patient. This is very closely followed and computerized by the people who's doing the clinical studies and getting it ready for approval. But after the initial immune reaction, what it really feels like catching a cold and coming down with chill and shake. but not as simple as just a simple cold, because you freeze, like in a deep freezer, and you shake, you never shook in your life before. A lot of, even clinics and hospitals at the beginning, they were panicking at what's happening, because it's like people in convulsion, but it's really not, because you have full control and you know what's going on. Matter of fact, I enjoyed every one of them. And after the initial chill and shake, it sets in exactly 60 minutes after. And here comes again another way to make Kandriana, live crystal and the bloodstream. You can make Kandriana with the blood. If some people who took in a successive injection of live crystal, they can evolve Kandriana inside in their own body from the blood cells. The blood cells will blow up, and the Kandriana start giving birth to Kandrianas. And that formation of the Kandriana, if somebody gets the injection, the Kandriana's genetic material gets into the bloodstream, and it starts, the blood cells will blow up 3-4 times its size and start producing Kandrianas. Now this takes exactly 60 minutes. And this is why the delay for the immune reaction. You won't have anything until 60 minutes, and then the immune reaction starts. Now, a lot of people get a lot of aches and pains depending what area is the disease. Now, if somebody has colon cancer, they have a lot of tummy ache. If somebody has breast cancer, the breast will burn and painful because they directly go to the site and go into action. The immune reaction, the chill and shake, is lasting 30 to 45 minutes. Some cases it goes to an hour. I had one which went to an hour. That again, that depending on how well the doctor is monitoring the cases and how much he's administering. Now, if you would overdose somebody can shake for 3 days. You know, like the first party got 30 cc's. The normal rate is 0.2 cc and 0.3 cc. And that poor man in Mexico was shaking for 3 days. But and of course, I know one other person in the audience here, my wife, sitting right there. She was shaking for 2 days, and they overdosed her by mistake in Mexico, and she got 3 cc. But nobody died and nobody got injured. The product is very safe because it's part of us. But this immune reaction is part of the treatment, and it's a desirable reaction because that's the way you know that the immune system is working. After the chill and shake is over, I myself, I get up and eat. And because my appetite is always comes back. I'm a very poor eater, but that's the only time I really have good appetite. And then I go back, and my temperature goes up to 103. Other people say 102, 102.5. And that lasts about 60 minutes. So it burns you out, and then comes the sweating, an hour and a half, and I look like somebody fished me out from a lake. So it's a just tremendous amount of sweating. But then next day I go to sleep, I feel like $1 million. I just feel terrific. I was feeling terrific when I was taking the treatment. But this is part of the cause. The Kandrianas, they don't care what kind of disease there is. They attack any disease what does not belong into human body. They're part of our immune system. And they do not live in your blood. When somebody gets it intravenously, they go straight into the lymph channels, and they join their ancestors. They're living together with your other defense cells in the lymph system. And we have evidence because we checked it, and that's where they stay. They're also super intelligent. They know what to do. They know when to multiply. They know how to multiply, and they know what type of military to build. They are military and military planners. They pick up the frequency of a disease or a virus, and they custom design a military to defeat it. So in each case, there's many different ways to use the product, but right now we're limited because we are very much restricted of how can we use and where can we use the product. And right now we're very happy that we have some countries where we're doing clinical studies that the local health department is cooperating with us, and the work is being done. So right now, most of the work is just being done with the straight Kandrianas. But the initial work, when we used to do culturing with the clinics, taking a minuscule amount of blood from a particular patient with a particular disease and put it into the Kandrianas with live crystal and culture a custom serum. Because the Kandrianas, they recognize the disease in the diseased blood, because the blood carries the history of your whole history of what's taking place in your body. And they will design and build a military to defeat the disease. So when you re-inject it, a custom designed military, the progress is much faster. Now, I have a clinical report here, which I can pass around if people are interested to look at it. Many cases of different types of diseases. I can happily report to you that we finally got the first written report from HIV positive to HIV negative. Thank you. We had 4 other cases of which we didn't get the written report. But based on the clinics and the clinical studies, it's indicated that the response for AIDS is 100%. Every one of them is responding, and the Kandriana is rebuilding the immune system. Now, whether well, basically, the timing, depending on individuals, like if somebody is willing to change their lifestyle, and they don't go back in the middle of the treatment and resume the old lifestyle, then they're on the way to recovery. Now, we had some people in deathbed. They already lost their memory. You couldn't see their eyes because they all sank into the skull. And 43 years old in Mexico City. And we put him back on the street and go back to work. The first thing he did, he went back to his old prostitutes and started all over again. So, you know, those people, they going back and forth. Some people say, well, you know, I have a treatment now. I build up the immune system halfway. I can resume my lifestyle. And if I get sick again or I get worse again, I go back for the treatment. Now, there are those kind of people too. So we are running into a lot of difficult problems, you know, just specifically with AIDS. But of course, other ones who stays with the program, the story is different. We have started collecting enough data that we can assemble statistics. We know now that breast cancer, 19 to 96% remission. Now, if somebody takes chemotherapy and radiation, the remission is 40%. The chemotherapy is destroying the tissues, the organ cells, the immune system, the immune cells, the bone marrow. In World War I, they used mustard gas to kill 1.5 million people. And that's what chemotherapy is. So, but still, we have a 40% chance for those people. Now, once the organs are destroyed and nothing to work with, we have to rebuild the organs first before even they can take the Kandriana, because they have a very strong immune reaction. The organs have to carry the toxins which you release, and it's no sense to release the toxins if it's circulating in your system, because your liver doesn't function or the kidney doesn't function. So these are problems with those who have chosen to go through on those routes, and then the remission rate is much lower. We have very good success in some of the most difficult cancer, like liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, 80 to 90% recovery rate. We have one from the military hospital in Mexico City, 17-year-old boy, terminal, the liver cancer metastasized to the pancreas, and they gave him 6 months to live. The treatment started in the military hospital in Mexico City in September 1992. The 17-year-old boy was free of cancer by April 93. We treated all kinds of cancers, from colon cancer. Matter of fact, it's a very interesting case because one man was also terminal. They sent him home to die, and he actually passed the whole tumor and collected it in a glass jar and took it back to the clinic in Arizona. See, the Cambriana is attacking the root system, and that's probably the reason, that he passed that tumor. A lot of cases, the tumor explodes or destroys. So it's, this is where the big problem comes, to remove the toxicity, to remove those, the dead cancer cells when you destroy it. And that's where the skill of the doctors and the clinics are coming in to help. And sometimes you go and go in and have surgery or drain it out. Now, one thing is also, if someone prefers to have a surgery and go through the orthodox surgery to remove the tumor, that's perfectly fine. If they take 2 Cambriana treatment before, 2-3 Cambriana treatment afterwards, they don't need chemotherapy, they don't need radiation, because the Cambrianas will destroy the tumor cells in the blood. And then it's safe to remove by surgery. So there will be a lot of cooperation between, and has to be, between the clinics, the doctors, and the medical professionals. And this is a kind of product, it really belongs to the hands of the professionals. And we can't say it enough time to people, don't mess with it, because it can do more harm to you than good. You have to monitor the release of the toxin in your body and remove it. All the other type of cancer, like prostate cancers and lymphatic cancers, different types, many different types treated. But some of them, the numbers is quite a number of them, so we can start assembling statistical figures, so we know the direction we are going. Besides the cancer, we also have reports on a lot of circulatory problems, and we have Epstein-Barr. Epstein-Barr and Candidas. I think I should spend a few words here on Epstein-Barr and Candidas. 86% of the population have Epstein-Barr in the United States, and I believe it's the same in Canada, most English-speaking countries. It starts out as mononucleosis. It goes into dormancy for 15 years, and when it pops back, it comes back as Epstein-Barr or Candidas. Of course, chronic fatigue. Now, most of the clinics, they don't even diagnose it. They just say chronic fatigue. It really comes from the Candidas eating away the glucose, what's being used by the Krebs cycle to make ATP. If you don't have enough glucose, then you don't make enough ATP, all your cells are starving, including your immune cell, and degenerating. And that's what brings in chronic fatigue, because your cell doesn't receive energy. But at the same time, if time goes on, like you are in a class 3 or class 4, that you have it 35, 40 years, the virus takes over. And your immune cells are so degenerated, degraded, that they cannot defend you. So they go after your organs. They go after the liver, you get hepatitis. They go after your spleen, your kidney, your brain, because they go into the brain, and actually that's when you have the loss of memory and you cannot function. And this is why they also call it the cousin of AIDS, because AIDS virus kills the cells directly, the immune cell, and Epstein-Barr and Candidas starve them to death. Now, the only thing you have to do in order to stave off or hold off the damage of Candidas, to take on ATP and supply your cells with ATP, you can shaft the disease. Now, if you do nothing else, just supplying ATP to your system, providing energy with your cells, you're safe, because, in a way, because you don't let your organs or immune cell degenerate, you can resume a normal life, you get rid of the symptoms, but the virus is still there. And if somebody wants to get rid of the virus, it's the toughest disease to get rid of, with Cambriana, but you can get rid of it. It takes anywhere between 35 to 50 or 60 injections to do it, and until your IgG becomes normal. Depending on how far a person is gone, if somebody had it for 35, 40 years, they certainly probably need about 40, 50 injections to get rid of the disease. But we have people, matter of fact, we have someone here in this town who had it and was in government position and he lost his work because of the sickness, and he's okay today. We have quite a few of them who has been restored from Epstein-Barr and Candidus. But I wanted to bring that up because that is a major epidemic, and everywhere you go, you hear about it. Now, it spreads by saliva. When you go into a restaurant in rush hour, if they don't wash the glass, the virus lives 15 minutes on the glass, you can get it. Or you pass around the bottle, drink from the same bottle. Or in a household, is one person have it, everybody else gets it. Unless they're very meticulous about putting the dishes right into the dishwasher after each use. It's very difficult to keep it from spreading. But I said the good news is really that ATP can be resupplied to the cell, and that alone will eliminate the chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, at this point, I would like to take a break, and I want to thank you all, and God bless you.
Folks, we'll give you a 20-minute break. Give you a chance to do what you have to do. I know a lot of you are thirsty. Sandra? I think Dr. Merkel's still trapped out in the foyer somewhere. And before I turn the podium back to Dr. Merkel, I have a question for him. I'm sure he was besieged as I was besieged. Many people are trying to find a way to have access to the injectables through their own physicians. And he and I had this discussion prior to the meeting, and I'm sure he will attempt to enlighten us. At least I hope he will. Thank you.
Hello again. I know. Maybe later. And I don't know exactly the laws in Canada. I understand that you have the naturopath law in Canada, so if the live crystal is 100% pure, clean, natural substance. It's produced from off-the-shelf food items. Anything which goes into the live crystal production as a raw material, you can find it on the grocery shelf. And of course, we also produce it under the control of Food and Drug in the United States, so we have to comply. Otherwise, we could not distribute it in the U.S. and all over the world. Now, the injectable, every time you mention injectable or medical, it automatically comes under medical. And this is, I don't know exactly what the laws are in Canada. So we have Dr. Dadgan in Toronto empowered with that to find out and file the DIN numbers, which he did. And he's working on that to get the country on approved in Canada and put the claims on live crystals. But without putting the claims on live crystals, I presume, because it's a natural substance, that the doctors are allowed to use it intravenously. Now, if you look at the history of the adenosine and adenosine monophosphate, they have been approved by the US FDA, the adenosine, in 1989. But they already been testing the adenosine and concluded its efficacy and usefulness in the human body back in 1929. And I have all this literature received from the FDA file. It was they released it reluctantly, but one of the senators got it for me. And so all in all, the life crystal injectable, which we call it injectable because it's a medical grade, it's very pure substance and only containing adenosine adenosine phosphates. So we are trying to find out the legalities in Canada, how it can be obtained, whether you can just randomly ship it to doctors, whether individuals has to get it just like in the U.S. In the U.S., an individual have to write a letter that it's for my own personal use, not for resale, and I comply with the 1988 law, and I have a doctor to administer it. With that letter in the file and in this, and the supplier, they ship it to them or to you or whoever orders it. And I presume it's the same goes for Canada. Now we have several clinics in Mexico who will ship it, or Dr. Delgan from Toronto. And we also setting up a centralized manufacturing which will be under the control of the Mexican Health Department. We're doing this with the Elcan group, the most powerful group in Mexico. And they also getting it through the Health Department for approval, both Candriana and Life Crystal. They're expecting it to be approved by next spring. That's all I can say. We filed in other countries as well and try to legalize it everywhere. Now, from here, I'm going to go to Hawaii, and I'm going to have a meeting there in the governor's office with some state representatives and university hospitals. The discussion will be to file the IND and NDA in the U.S. and get it cleared in the U.S. as well. So they seem to be very much interested in giving me a helping hand to do that. And that's where we really stand. In some countries, we produce it and distribute it legally, and other countries, you can bring it in legally. And we urge everybody that they only obtain the material in legal way. Now, I can supply material to research and development purposes. If doctors or institutions write me a letter that it's for the experimental use, then we can supply them. We call it depolarized water, which is the same grade. It's very high purity and it's sterile, and they can do whatever experiment they want with it. That's up to them. So that's where we're really standing. So as a person or as a corporation, I can't go out and start selling the life crystal generally to the public because the doctors has to administer it, and I don't think that anybody should try to get the material and inject themselves intravenously with it. Because even if you take distilled water and you inject air into your blood vessel, you can get into trouble. Any other questions related to this subject? Yes?
Yes, the product you're selling in the back, is that your product or is it product of yours?
The products, all the brand cases, yes, it's all our product. We shipped it out here. We shipped up here, I believe, 40 cases. Yes. I believe he's using it, yes. And I think he's a very good doctor. I know him. I met with him, and very good impression. And he seemed to be a very good, honest doctor.
What was the question?
Could you repeat the question?
Dr. Bennigan in Whitehorse. Brannigan, I'm sorry. Dr. Brannigan in Whitehorse, I believe. He's treating people, and he's a good doctor. Yes, sir.
Graduate training in Montreal, and then he worked in anesthesiology and surgery at the General Hospital in Montreal. And now he's in Whitehorse. He's also running as a legal candidate. He's
Yes, sir.
very much involved.
He's an excellent doctor, and my wife just came back to there. In the video that you had, you mentioned that it was something that you had interpreted as a gift to the world that you had come up with, and I wanted to applaud you on it. Thank you for your assessment on it, because it has come to me as a gift, particularly my wife. Last 3 weeks ago, I went up to the White Horse to see Dr. Brown, and we were on treatment for hypertension. And a day and a half after the first 2 injections, all the pain that she was suffering for the last 6 months immediately disappeared. And she has been changing ever since. She has gone through a round of the Combriana also injection and also another component. But I wheeled her into the airport. That's the extent of her pain. She couldn't walk from the airplane up to the car. So she wrapped herself constantly with tensor bandages just to diffuse the pain that was receiving all the different joints and moving constantly different places in the body. But it's self-disease. They couldn't pinpoint, they couldn't figure it out. And this was constant for 6 months. Prior to that, it was about 6 years where they finally knew what it did. But an injection, 2 injections of light crystals is something too, I don't know. If you could sort of elaborate a little bit more on what could have taken place and made the pain so immediate.
Well, several things. First of all, the light crystal injectable is pure ATP and GTP hydrolyzed, which also has AMP and ADP in the monodiene triphosphates. And it's restoring the cell functions, but it's also boosting the immune system. And there is a lot of indication in a lot of area that that alone be able to give protection or eliminate certain type of diseases. We understand how this compound is working. Now, from the other hand, it also cleaning up the circulatory problem. So that's also many times can cause very severe pains in the limbs if they have circulatory problems. And it's very efficient, and it reopens the fine blood vessels and cleans it out very efficiently and very fast. So that alone can bring up the overall recovery, because it improves the whole system. You restore circulation, respiration, everything can flow, everything is opened up. And sometimes even the lymph fluid gets into problems, so we have experience in that too, that it can reliquefy the lymph fluid if it gets into some problem. But it's very hard to say exactly what it did unless you really have the diagnostic and the test and the history before and after in order to really see the changes. Most of the time, the blood test reveals a lot too of what's happening. If you look at the components, what's taking place in the blood and the changes. But to tell you a very simple example, for example, arrhythmia. 1 or 2 injections just wipes it out and restores it. And then again, if you look at the old FDA file, it's in there that adenosine restores arrhythmia. But you don't hear much about it. Now, when a heart attack patient is rushed to the hospital, the first thing they gave him to save his life is adenosine. Adenosine is made from synthetically. It costs $1,000 per milligram, and that puts it $1 million a gram. Now, we're giving the same amount of adenosine, plus we're giving the guanosine and also the phosphates, which, it's much better for the same amount for $12.50 a shot. Now, at that price level, everybody can afford to take it and clean out the blood vessels before you have to call the ambulance. Yes, ma'am. No, oral crystal will not cure cancer. The oral crystal.
Can you repeat the question so we can?
The oral crystal will treat the cancer. Now, the oral crystal is rebuilds, restores, cleans out, chelate, rejuvenate, restores cell function, reinforcing immune system, but will not attack diseases. Now, only your immune system can attack diseases. The Chondriana, which is the military, that is the one that you use for all the untreatable diseases, whether it's cancer or AIDS or Epstein-Barr, rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. It's very effective against all of them. But it has to be Chondriana, and the Chondriana can be only administered